we're live.
Hi, so we're live. Hi, everyone. We meet again. I wish we were all up a mountain, not just on our computers, but just over a year ago, we were all together at WUTI Goes IdyllWILD, which was Women Under the Influence's first festival, where we got to celebrate cinema directed by women. And we also launched the Move Mountains Filmmakers Grant, which is an initiative by the North Face to create a professional pathway for a group of emerging women filmmakers by funding a film which encapsulated the notion of exploration, whether that be physical or mental, and in most cases, it has been both. The grantees who are with us today were chosen from a large group of applicants to make their dream exploration projects. So we have Mary Louise, Monica, Sana, and Abigail. And at the festival, they were introduced to our handpicked mentors, three highly acclaimed directors with a wide-ranging skill set who will be there to advise our filmmakers through every step of the process, which is Eloise King and Taylor Reese. Hi, guys.
Hello.
This is such a thrill for me to be able to see you all again, and it's been such a thrill to see your finished films, and now to talk about that. Barbara Koppel was also one of our mentors, but sadly she can't be with us today because, as she is famous for, I'm sure she's immersed in some exciting film project. So, talking of stories, I would love to know a little bit about what were the first sparks of the stories that finally got told, and were these stories that you had brewing previously, or were they inspired or encouraged by discovering the Move Mountains Grant? Mary Louise, for example, you took a kind of emotional trip back to your family's homeland in the Democratic Republic of Congo with your father and documented it, and that was your directorial debut. Was this something you'd wanted to do for a long time, or did you hear about the grant and did that kind of spur this exciting mission?
Yeah, so I heard about the grant first and was kind of nervous to apply, but was thinking of a story idea, and I thought that, like, if I was going to win this, I wanted to do it in honor of my culture and my family's culture. So that's just what I became most passionate about writing, and it's what kept me going, like, through the grant process, because it wasn't an easy one for me. It was a learning curve. So yeah, that was kind of kept me going.
How was that grant process? What did it entail?
Yeah, so it was like a lot of, it was like the story outline, a pitch, a budget, and a bunch of other stuff too. And then whenever they wanted, like, they were picking the finalists, they wanted another, like, round of, like, basically another pitch to kind of get a better feel of my film. I don't know if any of y'all did that, but I did that, and I was like, okay, like, I have to really sell it again. So yeah, it was just a lot of me going to a coffee shop and writing and writing things out, planning things out.
Monica, your story, Women of the Land, revealed women finding community and purpose in central Mexico, fighting to save the iconic Golden Eagle. And I believe that's your directorial documentary debut. How did you come to that story? And also, was that something that you had kind of brewing away before you heard about the grant?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to transition into documentary for a while now, and especially doing nature and adventure documentary. That was a dream of mine, coming from a more corporate and scripted background. So when a friend told me about the grant, and he was like, "That this is perfect for you. You have to apply for this," and it was it was an amazing opportunity. I had already a story in mind. I was just looking how to put it out. I knew that I wanted to shoot in Mexico. I knew that I wanted to do something about conservation. And through all the process, the story turned out to be something different. Instead of becoming a nature documentary, an adventure conservation, it became about the community. The more and more during pre-production that I got to meet the women and talk to them, it was obvious to me that the story was not about the animal or the place or the environment, but it's about the women that lived and were trying to protect the animal. So it was a lot of revisions too, of a lot of rewritings to figure out what we wanted the character to tell us and what the story was going to be about. And I think in the end, during the proposal, that's what came out of the story. It's more a story about a group of women finding their place in society and in their community with this project and monitoring the royal eagle, but it didn't end up being about the eagle itself or Mexico or the conservation program. So it was a little of a turn, but I think that's what I learned the most. That's what documentary is about. Not just letting all the characters guide you and see where you end up.
It's exciting to hear that the grant has been a kind of motivating factor. Sana, you were our only narrative film in the group. Again, was this a story that you'd wanted to tell, or did you hear about the grant and feel like this would be a good fit?
Yeah, I think the themes of the film, which, thinking of contrast and how newcomers experience new environments and being in the outdoors and specifically camping, and also connecting it to the idea of ancestral memory and basically the question that I'd been thinking about for a long time, but didn't know if it would be a documentary or narrative, because I primarily make documentary films. So this was my first venture into narrative as well, was how do we connect to a place that's not our own, yet still has elements that, remind us of whatever home is. So that to me was the guiding light. And I wrote this treatment because I saw the question of like exploration. And I was like, well, I have this idea of, a newcomer coming to this new land and really trying to connect with this place that she's not familiar with, through the idea of camping, which can also be kind of funny and absurd for people who maybe haven't grown up with that tradition. So that's how it was born, but it was really through the process of doing it where the story really came fully into life, where I really started scripting and going to New Mexico a few times and really kind of getting to know the place and the community and just really finding the story through that.
How in depth did you go into the writing process before you knew that you'd won the grant?
So I always tell everybody this was one of the most intense kind of full forward push experiences I've ever had, because I didn't have a script even when I had found out about the grant, and I'd never really done much script writing. So it was like a huge curve in terms of needing to script the story and all the other parts that come with putting a film together in a short time. So I had an outline and an act structure, but it changed a lot. And like I said, the story really evolved over even just the period of making the film, even up until we were shooting. So that was an experience.
It's so exciting. There were so many kind of firsts. Abigail, your film tells a very personal story of a woman trying to heal her patch of California grassland. Did you already know the subject? Were you already familiar? And how did you get to this point where you wanted to make a film telling this story?
That's actually a fun story. And I created doing the grant process, as Mary Louise just explained, and all of the kind of ins and outs of that. I had pitched it to completely different subject and Phil, who was a rancher in Montana, and a different woman. And as we basically, when I got the call that they said, we're excited for you to make this film. And I talked to her. She's like, you know what? The timing isn't going to work for me. And I'm not going to be able to collaborate with you on this. And so I'm thinking, oh no, how do I say North Face, oh, I can't make this film anymore? So within a very short period, I start reaching out and I'm like, who else kind of could fill a similar role? I knew I wanted to have the story of a young woman who didn't necessarily come from a farming or ranching background, who was kind of living an unconventional life and doing this type of regenerative agriculture and healing land. And a couple of different people pointed me to Jenya, and I feel like it ended up being much better than the original concept. So I lucked out, and fortunately the North Face was okay with me kind of changing gears last minute.
I love those stories when it feels like the kind of filmmaking gods are guiding your hand somehow. You're like, it could only have been this way.
Exactly.
Hopefully one of the highlights of getting awarded the grant was coming to the WUTI Goes IdyllWILD Festival and meeting the mentors for the first time.
Yeah, definitely.
Eloise, I was so excited that you could be part of this venture, because you have such a kind of wonderful CV, not only as an award-winning director in your own right, but you've also been the global executive producer at Vice and ID and founder of Women on Doc. So you've seen the filmmaking process from all kinds of sides. Would you tell us a little bit about when you got to meet our filmmakers and how that process started to unfold? Oh,
there we go.
Yeah, sure. So I guess when you invited me to be part of WUTI, I was just really excited. I think anyone who's ever made a film or who wants to make a film just knows how rare it is an opportunity for someone to give you a pot of money to make something, and then also just to have a bit of support around it. And so I was really pro that. Like I generally am. I think it's hard to make films. I think it's such a collaborative effort. And so I think I was just really, I guess even before meeting them or knowing the stories, just like really honored and really excited just to know. So as soon as we got to IdyllWILD, and I started like reading the scripts, because I think I'd been hounding everyone to see who'd won like ahead of time. And I think Abigail was the first person that I met. And so it was just even just sort of, meeting her and hearing about like her, like just general like wealth of experience and just like passion for storytelling. I think that was great for me. And then, individually, Mary Louise, Monica and Sana, I just felt like what was incredible was that they were all incredibly distinctly different voices. And so actually there was going to be a real challenge for me as a mentor to bring the skills that I had, hopefully to try and help in, what ways I could. And in the process, I think at the beginning, particularly meeting Taylor and the meeting like Barbara was also amazing, because I think what we all know is that no filmmaker ever has the same route, and a natural part of being a filmmaker is like this curiosity in terms of how other people do that. So being able to kind of sit down over that first weekend and sort of start to get to grips with what people were trying to achieve, and hopefully like trying to sort of work out a little bit how you could play a part in that, was kind of just something that I definitely like really embraced, and had differing levels of contact. I think Abby and I probably spoke the least, and like the various other filmmakers, we talked at sort of different intermittent times across the process. But you always feel really committed to trying to help someone realize their vision, because it is such a rarefied opportunity to get to make your first project, or something that at least you want to take out to the world as a calling card.
Thanks, and I should say, I'm loving this sort of international nature of our panel, videoing in from Nairobi, Eloise, and whooshing over to Colorado for Taylor. Taylor, we were so excited to have you as a mentor, because not only are you an avid filmmaker, but also a genuine adventurer, and you've made films from the likes of National Geographic to the United Nations. And with your rigorous education of a master's degree from Yale, you have a commitment to really understanding what underpins the stories that you're telling. So, Taylor, could you also tell us a little bit about your first experiences with the grantees and how you felt your role unfolded?
Yeah, echoing Eloise, like, and everyone here, really getting to spend that time at WUTI and IdyllWILD that first weekend was, just like, I think, an incredible way to make this about community and friendships, and not just 3 phone calls that were supposed to be scheduled at different stages in the process. And so just, a really organic way to kind of get to know each other by spending the weekend together, taking in films and stories. And from there, I found it like really surprisingly interesting how much I learned even in the process of working with, each of you really, and particularly Marie-Louise in the early stages before she headed out to Congo. We had a lot of different conversations about teams and roles and dynamics and intention and story. And, there's just so many components that go into making a short film, especially independently, taking an idea that you have and trying to bring it to life. And so many challenges, funding is challenging, getting equipment is challenging, trying to facilitate helping each other do that, even if it doesn't always work, story and script and even client relationships. I mean, there's so many aspects of it that came up for me getting to interact with each of these women. So it's like a refresher course in just how many ways there are to go about this craft, really. And especially when you're winging it, what comes up and really how we can be there for each other in different ways.
Mary-Louise, how was your experience getting to meet the mentors for the first time? And did you find that you connected with different parts of their experience that were sort of more relevant to your film?
Yeah, so I had done my research on each person before I got to meet them. And so I was super excited to meet them. And there's this thing where like when I like see filmmakers that I'm like inspired by, I kind of like assume that like, they're like, this person who's like untouchable, like you can't like, but then like I got to meet them and realize like they're human too. And it was really amazing connecting to them, each in different ways. Yes. But since, I was working on my film, I kind of asked them this roughly like the same questions but got different answers. So was really, really excited about that. But yeah, I really think that meeting at a film festival kind of put my inhibitions down about this process, because I didn't know like what it was going to be, like whether it was going to be like very like structured. But I just see them as like mentors, but also friends too. So,
Sana, did you guys, as filmmakers, have you kept in touch and kind of sustained a relationship that's been supportive through this process, or have you been very much sequestered in your own worlds, getting your films made?
You mean with all of the grantees and the mentors? Yeah, I mean, we touch base at different points, I think, because all of us probably had a very different process in making this film, but we all knew, we had a similar destination. And it's also a lot of those initial challenges, or even just working within, just trying to make things happen with limited resources. Like we weren't just directors, we weren't just writers, we were like producers, production managers. We had so many roles to play. And I knew that I had a cohort here who can share those experiences with me, that we're all at the very same time, at the exactly same moment, going through this process of like making this project come to life. And, all of us were also very ambitious in that we did it in remote locations or far away in the outdoors. So even the challenges that come with that, just trying to be focused. And I really appreciate, I reached out to Eloise a lot. I reached out to Taylor a few times and Barbara. And it was always affirming to just be like, there is a group here that is looking out for you. And I think also when we started at WUTI, that was very symbolic because it was a women-centered festival. It's women filmmakers, and we had that panel, and it was just this symbolism of like, you are being put on this platform, you're being given this opportunity, and we hope that, you know, there's a lot of people looking out for you in that sense. So just having that in our mind really helped. Although, of course, when you're making a film, you can also go very deep in and forget the rest of the world and everything else that's happening. So,
well, hopefully we'll all be reunited there this time next year.
That would be great.
We should give Barbara Koppel a shout out here because she really is a kind of living legend who's made. It's hard to count the films, but it's, you know, in the 30s. Double Oscar award-winning documentarian. Monica or Abigail, did either of you have any experiences with Barbara that shine out? Because she was such a fantastic sort of presence at the festival and threw herself in as if this was the first festival she'd ever been to, which was kind of fun. Monica,
yeah,
did
sure.
you have
I mean,
oh,
yeah.
Abigail.
Sorry.
No, Abigail, sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Kind of what Mary Louise was saying about the, you know, the untouchable, like you said, Barbara is a living legend. And I think I was one of the first to arrive in the cabin, and she comes out and she's like, come and sit on my bed. It is, you know, she just was like, was pointing out, I forget, it was like, it wasn't very comfortable or something was going wrong, but she was just immediately, there was like the icebreaker, and she had me like jumping on her bed in her room with that. I was like, wow, okay, I can see why you are able to get these amazing interviews from Jimmy Carter and from coal miners and from everyone you are, because you just feel immediately comfortable around her. She diffuses everything, and she's just so easygoing and genuine. So yeah, I really connect with Barbara, and we actually had the same representation for commercials. So we worked with a lot of the same producers at nonfiction, where I'm represented for commercial production. So we had that immediate tie right away too. So, and I got to go see some of her, she invited me, as I think she did with everyone else, to kind of different things, and got to see her Desert One, is that the name of it? I forget. Her latest film, when she was in DC with that. So yeah, it was wonderful, and I hope to keep in touch with, you know, with everyone here and with Barbara as well.
Fantastic. Due to a sort of timing mix-up, I didn't expect my first interview with Barbara Koppel to be in my pajamas, but there it was. Monica, how was your first experiences with the mentors, and were there specific areas that you kind of locked into that were particularly helpful for your film?
Well, I really loved meeting them for the first time in IdyllWILD. I think that was such a fun experience, and it was really bonding for us. I'm naturally a really shy person, so it's hard for me, especially like as a director, to bond with people. But it felt like Abby said, it was just like a really relaxed environment. I remember the first time that I saw Barbara, and we were coming out of one of the parties of IdyllWILD, and she was just arriving at the house, and I saw her, and I opened the door, and I just like hugged her, and I was like, oh, is this really weird? And usually like Mexicans, we tend to like kiss and hug when we say hi for the first time to anyone. So like I just went and kissed and hugged Barbara, and I was like, oh, am I being weird? But after the days passed, she was just so fun to hang out with. She had so many stories, and it was just a really crazy experience. I mean, I still remember having classes in film school, and remember how much Harlem, USA impacted me, and just like knowing that she was gonna be there, it was just a really surreal experience. And then, I mean, all the mentors and all the grantees come from really, really different backgrounds. They have really different filmmaking style. So it was great to have different inputs and different eyes from everyone during pre-production and production. and especially during post, I think Abby helped me a lot. It was great to feel the connection to these women and to have the support, to know that, you know, it's not just beyond those 3 phone calls. Like maybe I can email someone or just like get a text to get like an opinion. So it felt like a really bonding and community-like experience, which is something I haven't felt before in filmmaking. So that's a really great first experience with that.
That's awesome. What's really lovely about all of the films is that they manage to really balance these personal stories with broader themes as a way of connecting audiences to these specific issues. Eloise, in your work directing and producing, you've often brought social themes to the fore, but in a way that's been really engaging for audiences, both as a director and producer. Is this something that was kind of a conversation with the filmmakers, how to balance the personal and then the more the broader issues?
I think actually everyone's natural instinct was to go through like a character-driven lens, so kind of putting that humanity first. Obviously with Mary Louise, she was telling like an incredibly personal story. I think a lot of the work that we did kind of centered around essentially how you structure an evolving conversation that you're having with yourself as you're kind of unveiling your own sense of identity and trying to piece that together within the context of like broader social cultural issues that are happening. And I think it was really interesting in that journey to really see her, you know, like blossom and like find her voice within that process. And I think that's essentially what situates her like really at the heart of that story, which also makes it incredibly relatable, is like that sense of sort of like piecing through. And I think what sort of Sana did as well was, you know, there is this issue of immigration, of course, in terms of having her central sort of character be the very first thing you see and the very first person you meet. I think it's instinctive that you're going to have a sense of like how she's feeling, what she's going to experience, and some of the questions that are coming up as there's this, you know, she's posited both her and the father within a situation that in some ways is like difficult to ascertain, isn't it? And I think that sense of journey always felt like it was at the fore, as opposed to the idea of like really ramming down your throat, like this is what it is to be an outsider, not to have a sense of home. And I think what we certainly talked about a lot was just, I think with Sana, it's like really just trusting her instinct as a filmmaker, because she'd already done so much doc. And so the idea of working within this new form, I think in some ways, particularly because I haven't done feature and I haven't done fiction, I think I kind of lent into my experience in that way and said, I guess from what I'm hearing from you, I think you can really trust yourself. And like, how would you tell this? You know, how would you center those characters and those feelings and those emotions as they're unfolding? And how would you sort of stop it from feeling like, you know, like a campaign piece and fundamentally like something that's going to grip people if it were a doc? And I think, you know, that was something that she's done incredibly well. With Monica, I think it was really complex because there was so much actually in terms of her story. And I think the fact that she'd met these incredible women, we like, you know, went back and forth, I think, a lot about the ideas of what the program was and what the program was sort of constituted, and then also what the eagle meant as representation. And I think almost sometimes, I think the process of filmmaking is doing all of that exploration, so going really wide, isn't it, in order so you can come back and really focus on what you see as important and what is central to your vision. And I think she achieved that incredibly well. And I think, you know, it goes without saying that Abigail's story is just, it's people first. Like, there are a couple who are like, there's a love story at the heart of that, and through that sort of you know, emerges this love story, this caring, this nurturing for nature and understanding and proximity. You know, you start at the beginning with a story about loss and you end with something that's much more redemptive. And so I think, to sort of answer your question, no, I don't think it was difficult for them. I think they all had like a really incredibly strong instinct for going with what moved them, what would possibly move other people. And by doing that, actually those layers of nuance naturally were able to sort of stack on top.
Sana, maybe you could speak to that a little bit, because, obviously this is a, immigration, displaced people, very talked about topic, but you took this lovely kind of unique child's eye vision and a kind of dreamlike kind of narrative approach that wasn't on the nose, and but was incredibly evocative and took us this beautifully kind of refreshing, had a beautifully refreshing feel. Could you tell us a little bit about this approach?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the key thing to this whole process was really, how do you trust your instinct and really, as a director, become someone who's really kind of makes these decisions that can sometimes be risky, or maybe, there's such a departure from what I'm known as or what I've done previously in nonfiction, these approaches that it was constantly just needing to trust my own gut and my own voice, and really going for that visceral feeling, which, sure, there's parts of emotion, or there's emotions that I can relate to in the lead character that I've gone through, that I can, that take place in the story, but this also went beyond that. And that was also really informed through a strong creative collaboration with my DP, who was really, guided me and really using like the visual storytelling elements and being like, well, if we're really trying to convey a sense of her feeling contained in the beginning, we should take place in a contained space. So in the bus, and those kinds of elements that came through just these conversations and discussions. I think even discussions I'd had with Eloise and like other people on my team. And I feel so grateful for that, because as a first-time filmmaker in this space, it was really, really important to have a team that trusts my vision, but can also extend it and can really help expand it. Meanwhile, I still have to be really certain about what I'm looking for and the feeling that I'm going for. And I think Abby actually had said something to me really that stuck with me very early on, which was, I had made a mood board or a vision board very early about the look and the feel and like the textures that I wanted, that came to me even before I started writing. And she just kind of was like, just keep, I think, thinking about that and like remembering that feel and that look, and don't worry so much about like the logistics and all this other stuff that can complicate it. And I think that really guided me throughout. Like every time when I was casting, when I was looking for a location, I was like, does this relate to the feeling that I wanted? So that was the most important thing when I really went through this process. And I'm really grateful to everybody who reminded me of that.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice, because, it is such a complicated process, but to be able to go back and just really remember that initial spark that got you excited and engage with the project at the beginning is such a great guiding light in the process. Yeah, Abigail, could you tell us a bit about how you balanced or kind of prioritized the themes of the personal and then broader issues?
Yeah, that was figuring out that balance, because I think it's very obvious when you watch my film that there's a bit of I don't want to call it an agenda, but the purpose is to educate and expose people to a specific type of environmental stewardship. And, with climate change and with wildfires, that's something that I wanted to raise awareness about to this amazing work. So it was like, how do you do that and balance the story? And also there's so much nuance in how this whole process works once you start talking about native grasslands and root systems, and it can go on, and just kind of the history of how we even got to the place that we're in now, and the degradation of, the land. And so it's definitely a complicated story to tell in a short film, which is why mine ended up being 20 minutes. But yeah, I think it was just kind of weaving those two narratives together and finding a way to tie them in at the end, that the beginning and the end were about this idea that we're not separate from nature, that we are a part of it. And that was really kind of the thesis of the film. And so finding through Jenya's journey, and then hopefully through our own educational journey, that was kind of where I was hoping to land.
I was curious, the title Shepherd Song, was that story something that you knew, or did that kind of come about during the process?
Actually, so the ecologist that I interviewed in there, who is also a rabbi, he was talking about a Hebrew story, like a parable about where the shepherd learns the song, which he talks about in the opening. And that kind of story to me summed up so much this idea that, everything is connected, that the sheep learn it from the grass, and the grass from the soil, and the soil from the hawk, and but that it's all part of one thing. And so I think in thinking about Jenya's pursuit of feeling connected, right? Because she lost her family at such a young age, and her journey was to feel a sense of connection and belonging. So kind of zooming out to that idea that everything is connected and we're all connected. It's a little hippie woo-woo kind of stuff, but I think it resonates because it's true for her, and it is true also in terms of the science of nature.
Sure, and then and just the overarching just battles of a living through a relationship. As a sort of
and that
is Monica, you've balanced, as you said, a sort of plethora of themes beautifully in your film. So I think you sort of touched on this earlier, that it was kind of an evolution in terms of how that balancing act evolved through the process of your film.
Yeah, I think since I didn't have that much background in documentary, I was just with the idea of let's shoot everything that's going to happen. And we have a really rough of this story. We're going to find the eagle, and that's what it's going to be. But during pre-production, actually, Eloise helped me a lot to establish themes, which was the themes that I wanted to talk. So that's when the eagle kind of passed to the background. I mean, it is about the eagle, but it's not the main theme. So I think at the end, we landed on the main theme being the empowerment of women and the conservation of their own environment within their means. How a small community can make an impact in the environment of a country in just such a small land and with just a few people. It was hard to find out a balance, because I just had so much. At the end, I just ended up with, I don't know, probably 40 hours of footage. And I really love the kids. So I had a lot of footage of the kids and the school, and we had 3 days shooting in the town, and almost none of that was used because, just like Abby said, it was such a restrictive amount of time. I don't think any of us at the end made a 7-minute film that was just too short. But it was a great learning experience, just to figure out what is the important thing and what you want to say, not what the story is, but what you want the audience to keep. So at the end, it was more about women supporting each other and how they can battle or they can face the patriarchy in Mexico, which is a really big issue right now. And also how can they help their own community and their own ecosystem for their future generations. So I think those were the main themes that surfaced at the end.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's really what I took away, how elevating a sense of community can be. Yeah.
It was amazing to meet the women in person, and I think once I met in person with the characters, the story shifted a lot. I mean, it was 100% about them, about the women. And at some point, we during the first shoot, we didn't even got the eagle. So I was kind of disappointed of not getting the eagle, but it wasn't its story anymore. It was about the women. but fortunately during the second one, we were able to hike up the mountain and find it. So it ended up, everything ended up working out.
I thought you were going to say, and then we had to invest in some stock footage.
No, everything was there.
Mary Louise, your film, you were director and subject. So how did you perform that balancing act?
Yeah, so when I first envisioned it, I was not in it at all. And it was through Taylor and Eloise's advice and encouragement that I really like put my story, you know, at the center of it. And it makes sense, but at the time, like, I don't like being in front of the camera, so that was pretty difficult. But I think what helped is because we were shooting for 10 days. We know we were there for 10 days and we shot for less than 10 days, and we just took it a day at a time, figuring out like different scenes is what Taylor had suggested, you know, what we were going to be doing for that day and how to accommodate for the rainy season that we were in, because we were shooting in this past January. And so I think being able to plan each day beforehand kind of gave me the freedom to sort of, you know, trust my DP and trust my sound recordist to capture those things, and then kind of being in front of the camera when I needed to. But I felt much more comfortable whenever I was like behind the camera or like interviewing other people. And then when it came my turn, I was like, what is this? But it ended up turning out great. And I'm very thankful for that encouragement to kind of put myself at the center of my story, which seems obvious, but I don't know.
How was your dad? Did you have to do much cajoling to get him to open up on camera?
Oh no, he's actually pretty like natural on camera. We just did that one interview that one day, and it was really perfect. He watched it afterwards, and he's been getting a lot of like our family relatives like calling him and stuff, and he's like, he feels like a little celebrity right now. But yeah, he was much more of a natural than I was, and it was really great to get him to see me in my element and watch him in his element in his home. So it was a really awesome experience.
So what's so fun is
totally, by the way, fell in love with your dad in the movie. He's
Thank you.
So wonderful. So obviously everyone's had very different experiences, different geography, different size crews, etc. Taylor, you've shot in all kinds of interesting terrain. Did you have much practical advice for the filmmakers in terms of shooting on the move, how to put a crew together under a budget, how to prioritize that kind of those sort of practical elements?
I think it was Mary Louise who I spent the most time talking to during pre-pro time. And it was really fun to watch you go through that process of trying to figure out if you were going to put yourself in the story or not. And we had a lot of conversations just about, you know, this balance of going in with as much intention and preparation as you can, and an idea of a story as you can, with like your heart centered in what it means and where it's going, while also holding just as much space for like all these things that could happen that you're not going to be able to plan for. And so therefore also, how do you put together, I mean, if that's your goal, there's definitely documentaries where you know exactly kind of what you want to get and the structure is preset. So, I think knowing that it was Congo, knowing that there was a lot of moving parts, it was unclear who she was going to be able to connect with or not. We knew that there was this element of, you know, how do you create space for spontaneity to be brought into story, and how do you have a DP that's game for that, and what kind of relationship do you have with your DP on like a very kind of run and gun shoot where it's like at every day you have a shot list. Okay, I really want to, you know, spend some time in the kitchen or get these different elements in the streets or by the window that help me tell my story, but also, you know that like at any given point in time you might want to follow some lead somewhere else. So so the conversations that we had that, and I think really relate to the work I do, are just going into these more difficult situations and more remote environments with a crew that you really trust, where communication is really clear and good natured, and people are adaptable. And you know, Mary Louise, I really also appreciated how much you were growing into that director role, and how, you know, it wasn't your instinct to be like, well, does that mean like I have to be the boss and like tell them? Because I want to like step back and really give everyone all this creative agency. And I was like, that's a beautiful thing to wrestle with. And the answer is a little bit of both. You know, you need, you know, be yourself, and you know how to create the relationships that work well. But yeah, this is your story and you're at the helm, and it turned out so beautifully. Really proud of you.
Thank you.
So.
Who was your crew, Mary Louise?
Yeah, so funny enough, they were all climbers. My producer, who is I'm like very close to, Gabby Piamonte, we grew up roughly in the same town, but we didn't meet each other till we were at NYU in New York. And she was amazing. I really relied on her a lot. I really relied on my entire team. And my DP was Savannah McCauley. It had been her first time DPing. So I was really excited to kind of be a part of that process as well. Kind of everyone's first time like doing what they were doing. And my sound recordist, Biz Young, who at the last minute, you know, flew from Ohio to New York, and then from New York to Congo to be on this adventure with us. And so it was like a very tight-knit crew. We got very close in such a short amount of time, and still keep in touch to this day. So
amazing. I love all the firsts.
Yeah.
And so important to have a good sound person. Sana, your film was probably perhaps the most complicated in terms of putting crew, and also were there different partners involved beyond the grant in creating your narrative film. How did you go about putting your team together?
Yeah. So I didn't have different partners other than this grant. It was just kind of the grant and me. But in terms of, finding that team, which was really important, the first two people I approached were my producer, Katerina Barbera, who's a friend of mine, and we studied together in our grad school. And then my DP, Alana Mija Gonzalez, which, she's quite a rising star. She's based in the UK right now. And that was instinctual because it was also she had a really interesting life experience before. I don't know if I cut out a little bit, but I was just saying she had a life experience before going into filmmaking, similar to myself. I had kind of lived and worked internationally for different NGOs and, kind of humanitarian aid and refugee organizations and public health for many years before I went into filmmaking and into, and as a journalist, that's kind of how I got into filmmaking. And she similarly had also lived in many different places, also kind of had a background or story of migration and displacement in her family. So she really related to the story and really instinctually, just based on the treatment, was like, yes, I totally see this. I totally know how we could visualize this. And she kind of became like my right hand in terms of really helping to support and tell me, like, because I don't think I knew it would be different. I don't think I was ready about how different narrative would be from documentary. So all of it was just like an insane learning process. And again, trusting my gut. I just had to be very decisive very quickly. Working with a producer who was kind of locally knew the area and found the locations for us, and or took me to those locations. Like, this is where I think it would work, all the things you're looking for. His family ended up catering, and we set up an entire campsite in this place and like lived in these campers for 5 days while we were filming. And all the crew was incredibly dedicated. And I remember just like waking up and seeing this bus on the set and seeing like all these things happening. I'm like, wow, I wrote this world. It's like coming to life. So that was really incredible to just have everybody be there and supportive. You know, we were a very small crew considering the scale of the work, and many of us took on multiple roles. You know, my two producers, and one was a producer and AD, the other one was producer and sound person. My AC doubled as a DIT, like grip and gaffer, like things that were really merged. And I took on a lot as well. So that was a challenge on its own, but I really do think that I got this crash course of like, this is how you do it. Although I wouldn't recommend doing your first kind of film like this in a very remote, challenging setting with, you know, a different language, casting all folks who from all over the country, like a lot of firsts that perhaps could have been different, but I wouldn't change anything.
Well, the results were certainly successful. How about casting? Where did you find?
Yeah, so I worked with a casting director, Jennifer Peralta Ajiman, who might be watching. Hi, Jennifer. So she really helped to kind of put out, because I was really adamant that I want to work with people who are, you know, Afghan or can speak at least the languages from the region. And we did a very broad call out to different community groups, as well as traditional acting groups. And our lead, Huda Wahidi, the character of Aya, is a non-actor. And her tape came in kind of the last day or the second, I don't know, very late. I remember going through all the tapes and being like, oh, I don't know. It's hard casting child actors as it is, but I think I knew what I was looking for, which was like a very raw kind of feeling. And as soon as I saw her tape, I was like, okay, there's something about her. Like, I want to see this more. I know she's never acted, but that's great. Like that helps make it more real. So yeah, that was kind of how we worked through the process, just different tapes, and working with the two children in the film are both non-actors.
Fantastic. Monica, how did you go about putting your crew together, and how long did you spend with the women in your film? How did you go about getting to know them, earning their trust, and how was that whole process for you?
Well, I had a tiny crew, and I knew which people I wanted to use. I own, along with my best friend here, Vanessa, who was part of the crew, a small production company in San Francisco. So I knew I wanted to use my DP, David, who we've been partners for 10 years. And he started with adventure sports DPing. So I knew that he was perfect, but he was the only American for the shoot. We knew that it had to be mostly a Mexican crew. So although my best friend and me are based in San Francisco, we're both Mexicans. And in the Mexican side, I had Diego Covarrubias, who was the pilot, the drone pilot, and he got also the really close-ups of the eagles. And it was just us and a PA, and that's it. And my best friend from Mexico was our PA, and it was great. We knew it had to be like a really, really tight crew because we were gonna be camping. There were no like facilities at all. Everybody was a little freaked out about having to go bathroom in the outside for 10 days. But everybody was such a good player, and the crew ended up being fantastic. We had such a great time, and the community helped us so much. They did all the food. They helped us like get the mules, because we didn't know, we didn't have, with this budget, we didn't have a chance to go location scouting before to Coahuila, to the Sierras. So it was like going back and forth with the UN and with the CONAMP, which is the part of Mexico that manages all the land, all the parks. So we had to go back and forth with them and see what we had to do, like in terms of carrying the equipment. We had to, the two of their neighbors lend us their mules so we can go up the mountain. We had to like ask for people just to go knocking on doors and ask them if they had like extra tortillas or if they had extra salsa, because it's just such a tiny town. There's like no stores, there's nothing. So it was just like the whole community helped us. They provided whatever if we needed like a background, they were like, oh, I have this sheet you can use. If we needed anything that we needed, they were just so accommodating, and they were wonderful. Everybody was excited. All the kids were really excited about being in a Hollywood film. So it was just an experience for the whole town, and for all, like just like seeing all the kids running after the drone and like things I've never seen. Like the internet just got there like less than a year before. So this was all like huge new things that there were happening, and it was such a new experience for us too. Like I've never been in that part of Mexico. I've never like been in a location like camping for 10 days, no shower, no electricity. So Taylor was really helpful, just letting me know what kind of equipment would be used in the mountains, what kind of like power sources. So it was a lot of little details to put the film together, but it was a great work from all the crew, and also the community, and the UN helped us a lot. So it was definitely a learning experience, and a lot of adventures in the woods, but in the mountain, not the woods, but in the desert. But it was amazing. Yeah.
Abigail, your film was in slightly more accessible terrain, but how did you go about your planning process? Because one of the things that can be quite tricky to edit is how long you spend with your subject, and how to sort of contain that process and tell what is going to be the arc of your story. How did you go about putting your crew together and planning that?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge was just the amount of time, right? Especially in something where Jenny and Jack are nomadic, and so they're changing locations, and I knew that was going to be a part of the story. And then also you want to feel like there's a passage of time as their work. You need the recovery periods, and this is something that takes time. It's not necessarily a story that could be I captured in a couple of days, but that's really all we had. So I shot first in November. We actually just went out there, my DP and I, and her husband came as a PA, and we didn't even have sound, and that was because they were going to do a huge sheet move with the drone. So with the drone, so we wanted to make sure we captured that. And then we came back in January, so that was in November, and we're filming. That was when they had moved to Santa Barbara County, right there on the coast, which was an epic location to be able to film and to spend a few days. So yeah, I luckily also had a great, a producer who's a friend of mine, Leslie Mockley, who would, definitely wouldn't have been able to happen without her, because I'm more of a creative than a logistics person. So I was very thankful to have that support. And yeah, it was a bunch of friends, like everyone here, it sounds like, we all just kind of brought in our friends and favors, and kind of roughed it and put our hearts into it. And, overall, I feel like we lucked out with great weather, and were able to capture a good amount in just a few days.
Fantastic. I should mention, if anyone watching would like to ask a question, we can answer them at the end if you want to write in the text area. So here we are with all these beautiful films, and obviously there were, I'm sure, challenging moments through the whole process. And I'd love to go around and just ask everyone what they've learned through the process as filmmakers through, especially relating to those kind of challenges that they've overcome, but also perhaps what they've learned through exploring the subjects of their films. Maybe Mary Louise, tell us how have you evolved as a filmmaker, and were there sort of a personal evolution through your trip?
Yeah, I've learned to embrace the chaos, basically the chaos of pre-production, production, and post-production. Our films were originally due like March 15th, and I think that was whenever the world as we know ended. And so giving that extra time was, though it was really stressful because I wasn't in school anymore and didn't have those resources, I kind of like worked through it, and that extra time gave me more time to really refine my film. So in all the processes, I've just learned to sort of embrace it. And one thing that my dad had said while we were on set all the time was like, roll with the punches. And so I've just been doing that.
Sounds like great advice right now. Sana, What about you? What did you learn as a filmmaker and as a human being through
Oh my God, so much. I grew 10 years. I have like 100 gray hairs. I don't know. No, it was all worth it. I mean, I learned so much. And I think for me too, it's like, even though this was scripted and, that's kind of dogmatic and that you do obviously have to follow a structure and so on, I think that you had to also accommodate that you weren't going to get everything and that not everything is going to work out as you have planned. And that did happen during the filming process. And we had to start thinking about editing in my head already of like, how is that going to pivot because we didn't grab this scene in this particular way. But beyond that, it was just, I really think at this point I can appreciate of like just how impossible of a task it seemed in the beginning of like, okay, never written a script. I have to film before winter. I have to deliver by March. I need to go to this place that I really know no one and nothing about. I have to cast people in a language that's not that common. Like all of these things that needed to happen, but they happened. And I think through that, I really discovered just how much power there is in like when you have a vision and also when you have support and belief, like the fact that the North Face gave us, that this grant existed and that there was this kind of support, that of course it comes with its challenges, but just knowing just initially like someone took faith in me doing this and creating the project as I want. And that's all I need. I just need to keep going. And it took a lot, but we did it. And it's changed me and, kind of my focus and like my desires. It's really, really been one of the most fundamental, monumental things of my career so far.
That's amazing. Monica, what were your learnings from your documentary debut?
About filmmaking, I learned so much. Definitely it's a different style doing documentary filmmaking, and it was one of the most beautiful experiences in my life. Just shooting the mountain and getting to know just the mentors and the mentees and also the women in the mountain. It was, really empowering. And I think that's what I want to do. Like from now on, I just want to do adventure documentaries on women. But no, I like narrative too, so I want to do that. But one thing that I really learned about this process is to let go and not get stuck on the things that you cannot control. Not only during like the production, but just like after, after everything, all of this happened. This was not, the way that we intended to distribute it, to present it, but here we are, and just to make the best out of whatever situation you're handed. And I guess also to just reach out and try to get a different set of eyes if you're not completely sure. There's always someone that can help you and give you a fresh perspective. But also at the end, just trust your instincts and go what your heart tells you.
Thanks, Monica. How about you, Abigail? What were your pearls of wisdom? I love that, Monica, that's really where you want to go with your career now, because that really was actually the whole idea of the grant, was to encourage more women to move into that field. So it's,
yeah, definitely that's what I'm trying to do now from now on.
Yeah, Abigail, what was?
I just think that's such a great kind of message in the thesis of what everyone's kind of commented on here, which seems to have come up for everyone in different ways. But it's this idea of how empowering it feels to be able to trust your own vision and your own heart and your own intuition. And I think that's the, you know, at the core of what it is to like really feel fulfilled as a storyteller. And it is a practice, right? It's not necessarily like everything you do is a stroke of genius and certain people have it figured out and certain people don't. It is something that you grow in. And so to have the opportunity to use your voice and to make decisions and to be collaborative, I think it's a privilege. And so this was such a great privilege to do that. And you know, I'm not, I'm not a first-time filmmaker, and I do a lot of television, and I've done a feature, and I've done a lot of commercials, but this was the first thing I'd done in a very long time where really the buck stopped with me. Like there wasn't anyone else that I had to hand it into for notes who could completely want to change things or reroute or change course. And just having that autonomy and authority, and to be able to have also a community of women that I made the film with was just such a positive experience all around. And so it was, again, just another step in being able to step into my own voice and put something out into the world that really aligned with my heart and my values. And I just love to hearing that echoed in everyone else's stories as well. So I'm grateful.
I mean, what's kind of beautiful about mentorship is that it is this kind of two-way process. And I was wondering, Eloise, if anything had come to you through this process, what were your learnings from working with the filmmakers?
Oh, I learned so much. And I think fundamentally, one of the things I said when we initially kicked off was that actually we're in a real moment where it's really not about asking permission. You know, it's about sort of doing what it is that you really want to do. And so I think through all of the films as well, like, I mean, there's a reciprocity, isn't it? It's like in them sort of each individually pushing forward with like a vision that, for me as someone who's a mentor, is also about like how my world as a filmmaker opens up and sort of looks at like receiving my own messages. So, you know, it's incredibly fascinating to see other people's process close up. Like, of course, there is an input aspect to that, but with like Mary Louise, there was just like real sort of, it was so incredibly like personal at so many points in that. And so really also just like confronting someone who is really willing to put themselves into it was something that was really interesting for me, because my work doesn't exist in a space like that. With like Abigail's, what I really loved was just the scale of ambition, you know. And like, I think learning that you know, a short film can be so many different things, that you can really take that and you can really push the boundaries of, you know, what people are going to say is possible with, you know, 25 grand is fantastic, but as everyone knows, like once insurance and all of these other elements come into play, like it's not a ton of money. And so the same with Monica, it's like really challenging herself to work in a different form. It's like you can't not be inspired by each person taking a risk on themselves, and that's kind of the learning process of being a mentor, isn't it? It's like reminding yourself and all of us, that we never know everything. We just give the best advice that we can. You try to offer as much support as you can. Like with Sana, similarly, it's like, you know, there were lots of different milestones where it could have felt like this was, you know, how is this going to happen? How is this impossible task going to happen? And in encouraging her, you know, it's encouraging for me to see how she navigates that. And of course I learned from that in the process, that she like just, you know, took it on the chin. Like there were lots of challenges with having to, you know, cast actors or non-actors, for instance, like with what she's talked about in writing the script. But overall, I think my sort of biggest thing that I've learned, that I already know as a mentor, like I'm really interested in community filmmaking. I think the ethics of how we make work is incredibly important. I think how, you know, we share resources is something that will be and continues to be incredibly like vital for making sure that more women tell stories. But I think what it's kind of told me and taught me is everything we kind of already knew, is that you just need to give people a chance and they will surprise you, they will surpass their own expectations. And everyone's done a film that, like, you know, I didn't make it, they made it. And like, I'm really proud of them, and not in a kind of, you know, maternal way, but in a way that like giving birth to something that you've seen on a piece of paper and conceived of is a feat that not many people will achieve. And so, you know, I'm really excited for all of them. And the learning process is that, like, you know, you just keep passing it on, isn't it? Like, you know, it's a cycle in which, you know, you give. And, you know, I'm making a film and at the moment, and like, I definitely need support in that. And so, you know, the learning continues. I think that's the biggest lesson, isn't it? Like,
Taylor,
the learning continues.
What were your kind of biggest takeaways?
Eloise, that was so wonderful. I feel that a lot. Yeah, I think mostly that, just that, you know, there's no real top-down relationship to mentorship. It's not about one person has some bucket of knowledge and they're going to like pour some of that bucket into someone else's bucket. Like, knowledge itself is always created in the moment between people and in context and around a problem. And so I just found that, you know, most of the phone calls that I got from all the different mentees were always because there was like a problem one day, and I wanted to make myself available to that whenever I could. And so we were, you know, whether it was Sana, when you were trying to figure out how to set up the business or do the insurance, or Marie-Louise, when you were working through like your relationships and team structure, like we were problem solving, and the world of this film industry, independent doc, independent narrative, also, you know, working with corporate sponsors and creating really good supportive relationships is like, that's always changing. And so there's no set recipe. So like, I just loved being a part of this because it helped me to problem solve with everyone, and in the process, learn more myself about all these different aspects of what it takes to make a film. And at the end of the day, like Eloise was saying too, like, trust that, you know, it's easier to reach out for that kind of help and to solve problems together than I sometimes feel like it's hard for me to reach out to others when I'm struggling with a certain creative problem. So just like continuing to build more experiences around this nature of collaboration is so powerful.
Yeah, that's certainly a lesson. It took me years to learn that you can ask.
Yeah.
And then it's, oh gosh. And the value of that, how indispensable that is, and how willing people are, because the film industry, the commercials, etc., is always sort of set up as this kind of from a competitive place. But it's beautiful to rethink.
I think, sorry, I was just going to jump in because I think that's really important, is that this process really helped me also discover just how powerful that is, of like, people want to help you, and you need to ask people questions. You need to ask for help. And I really, within that, built a community, you know, like whether it was asking local filmmakers that I know questions I didn't know the answers to, or asking the mentors or asking the grantees. Like, it was always important to keep asking and not being afraid to show, like, I actually don't know this. So just wanted to add that.
Amazing. And just very finally, I just want to know what everyone's doing. And what's next? Sana, I know congratulations are in order, because the film is appearing at a festival. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so it's appearing right now. It's 2 festivals have accepted it, and we're waiting to hear about others. We won an award at the Santa Fe Independent Film Festival for Best New Mexico Narrative Short, which was exciting. And we're going to the Toronto Real Asian Film Festival, and hopefully lots more. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
I love that. It's so great to be able to, well, hopefully go places with it. That's congratulations. So Mary Louise, where are you? What's up with you next?
So right now I'm in school, and I'm going to just finish school. I'm in my 4th and final year. So hopefully next semester, we'll be able to start production again. And I would like to maybe shoot another documentary or a narrative before I graduate. So, looking forward to that, but mainly just finishing school. Yeah.
Abby, what if the world reemerges at any point? What's on your ambition docket?
Well, this film is also doing the festival circuit, which is great. We're in. We did a premiere Mountain Film, and then we're in. We did the Port Townsend Film Festival, and right now it's in the Ojai Film Festival, and also the Anchorage Film Festival. So that's been cool to be able to see it out in the world, sharing the message, because I mean what's happening in California. It's been such an amazing time to be able to put this out in the world with the devastating wildfires. So that feels really, again, like the universe saying that I made the right choice to pursue this project. But yeah, I'm continuing to do commercial and TV and film work, and have a few projects in development. And I'm taking a page out of Sana's book, and am starting a narrative piece as well. So I may need to be speaking of asking questions, expect a phone call, because I have a big learning curve there as well. But I think the space and the time in the quarantine has allowed me to do some writing and kind of flex that muscle that I haven't really been able to in many years. So I look forward to that.
Well, congratulations about the festivals. And Monica, I know you're eager to launch into your career as adventure documentarian.
Yeah, I mean that's what I would love to do. Right now, I'm trying to also try a different thing, trying to try new things. I started writing also. I've done some narrative and some short films, but I want to go into, I mean, with how the world is right now, we haven't had much of like corporate or that kind of work. So right now I think it's the moment of content. So I would love to do a pilot. I would get into TV, or get into some like scripted TV. So that's what I'm trying to do. So hopefully I can develop something before the year ends, and get into production of some TV shows. So if anybody's interested in producing, that's too.
Well, good luck with all of your exciting plans. Taylor, what have you got brewing?
Currently have a couple films on the festival circuit. So it's been really cool, actually, to participate in a lot of festivals virtually. I know we're all screened out sometimes, but just to be able to connect with a lot of other filmmakers and see these films out in the world, as Abby said, has been good. And I've been working on a feature doc in Chile and Argentina around the social justice side of green technology, kind of focused around where lithium is being mined. And Chile's been closed to tourism, but they did just open with a new 14-day quarantine in Santiago, and then you can freely go. So I'm considering going back.
If you go, I know amazing art house cinema you have to visit there. Okay. Relaunched. And Eloise, dying to know what you're doing in Nairobi.
Can I just quickly add that you talking about the art house cinema is the most like Tabitha comment ever. Like saying recommendations to Taylor. That's just like you to a T. So yeah, I'm in Nairobi at the moment. So after like everyone like doing COVID and like lockdown for like months and months and months, I'm shooting, like I'm making my first feature. So I'm shooting at the moment. So I've been here for like the last month, and the world is like wonderful and brilliant and different and difficult shooting during a pandemic. But yeah, so that's my main thing. Like it's been really great. Like it's supported by Field of Vision and the Wellcome Trust, and also I've just sort of become like a Logan nonfiction fellow. So I'm looking forward to like doing exactly, you know, hopefully this in a month or so, and just having a lot of mentorship and support. So it's going to be really cool.
Can't wait to see that and all the other projects that are going to emerge from henceforth. And I just send you all a lot of love, and it's great to see you all and to hear about this adventure that everyone's been on together. And I hope you get together in real life again sometime soon. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Tabitha.
much.
Such a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
So great to see everyone and your beautiful films.
I'm sad to say goodbye.
Same time next week.
Yeah, same time next week. Take care, guys, and good luck with everything.
Bye. Good to see you, all of you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.